Aries, pause for a second. If you're hearing this right now, on the 29th, this is not an accident. Something you've been sensing in your chest, that tight feeling, that quiet knowing you've tried to ignore. It's here for a reason. Because today, the mask doesn't slip quietly, it falls, and what you see may hurt for a moment, but it also sets you free. You've waited long enough, you've been patient long enough, and the universe is done asking you to hold on. So take a breath, listen closely. And if this already feels familiar, leave a comment and trust yourself. Because what's about to unfold next is the moment everything finally starts to change. Aries, let me talk to you for a moment, just you. Not as a sign, not as a label, but as a person who's been carrying more than they ever said out loud. I know you felt it before today, that quiet pressure in your chest. Like time itself leaning in, asking you something without words. You tried to stay calm. You told yourself it would pass, that if you waited a little longer, things would soften on their own. But here's the truth you already know. Some things don't soften, they reveal. And that's what this moment is about. Not punishment, not loss, but clarity. There's a certain kind of silence that follows you when you've been patient for too long. It's heavy. It looks peaceful from the outside, but inside, it drains you. You didn't imagine that. Your body noticed it before your mind did. And I want you to hear this gently. You didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because you hoped, because you cared, because you believed that love, loyalty, or understanding could fix what was never meant to be fixed by you. That says something powerful about your heart. But there comes a moment when growth stops asking politely. When the universe doesn't shout, it simply removes the disguise. That's why this feels intense. That's why it's happening now, not to break you, but to stop you from breaking yourself slowly. I know part of you still wants to explain, to justify, to make sure everyone understands your side. But listen to this carefully. You don't need to convince anyone who refuses to see you. Your truth doesn't require permission. And this next breath you take, this pause right here, it matters more than you think. Because something subtle is shifting. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. It's the moment you stop arguing with your intuition. The moment you realize peace is not something you earn by enduring discomfort. It's something you choose by honoring yourself. And when you do, life responds in unexpected ways. Not all at once, not like a movie scene, but through small alignments, gentle protection. The right person standing a little closer than before. A door that feels lighter to touch. You don't have to rush. You don't have to force anything. Just stay present with what's being shown to you now. Because what comes next isn't about confrontation, it's about direction. And once you feel that inner pull, you'll understand why this moment had to arrive exactly when it did. Stay with me. There's more unfolding beneath the surface. Aries. There's a certain moment when you feel it before you can explain it. It's subtle at first, a shift in the air. Like the room changes temperature without anyone touching the window. You notice the smile doesn't reach the eyes. The words sound kind, but something underneath them feels sharp, not loud, just off. And you don't say anything. You rarely do. You've learned to read energy more than behavior. You sense what isn't being said, what's being hidden behind politeness, behind tradition, behind the excuse of keeping the peace. In spaces meant for warmth, you feel yourself tightening instead of relaxing. That's when you know. Not with anger, not with drama, but with clarity. The truth doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives calm, almost disappointingly quiet. And that's what makes it impossible to ignore, You're not looking for conflict. You never were. You were looking for safety, for honesty, for a place where you didn't have to keep your guard up while pretending everything was fine. But something about this moment pulls the curtain back just enough, and suddenly, the pattern becomes visible. You see how attention shifts, how warmth turns conditional, how support fades the moment you don't play your role. And here's the part that matters most. You don't feel shocked. You feel confirmed. That quiet voice inside you finally stops questioning itself, stops asking if you're being too sensitive, stops apologizing for noticing what others ignore. Because your intuition has been speaking to you for a long time, you just didn't want it to be right. There's a sadness in that realization. But there's also relief. Relief feels like exhaling after holding your breath for months, maybe years. And I want you to hear this clearly. Seeing the truth does not make you hard. It makes you honest. You are allowed to notice when something costs you your peace. You are allowed to acknowledge when a dynamic drains you instead of nourishing you. That doesn't mean you judge. It means you choose. And choice is where your power has been waiting. You don't need to expose anyone. You don't need to confront. You don't need to prove a thing. Sometimes the bravest act is simply stepping back, creating distance without noise, protecting your energy without explanation. There is wisdom in that restraint. There is strength in walking away quietly, because when you stop feeding what feeds on you, something else begins to grow. Space opens, light moves in, and you start to feel yourself again. Not the version of you that adapts to survive, but the version that breathes freely. Stay here with this feeling. Don't rush it. Let it settle into your body, because once the truth shows itself, the next movement isn't outward. It's inward. Aries, there's a reason this surfaced now, of all times. Not when life was busy, not when everyone was distracted, but right here, in the middle of celebration, when lights are softer, when emotions sit closer to the surface. Some people don't know how to exist when someone else is fully seen. They can tolerate you when you're quiet, when you're accommodating, when you dim yourself just enough to keep things smooth. But the moment your presence fills the room, when laughter follows you, when others naturally turn toward you, something inside them tightens. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your light reflects something they avoid in themselves. And holidays have a way of magnifying that. They strip away routines. They remove distractions. They ask people to feel instead of perform. For someone uncomfortable with their own emptiness, that pressure becomes unbearable. So what was hidden starts leaking out, in small gestures, in passive words, in a tone that feels colder than it should. You notice it even when no one else does, because you're sensitive in the truest sense of the word. Not fragile, perceptive. You read rooms the way others read headlines, and lately, the room hasn't felt safe. That doesn't mean danger, it means misalignment. And here's what matters. This is not happening to ruin your peace. It's happening to show you where peace no longer lives. There is a difference. You were never meant to carry everyone through moments they refuse to face. You were never meant to sacrifice your inner calm so others could stay comfortable. That was never the deal. What makes this moment powerful is not the exposure, it's the timing. Because now, you're strong enough to see it without collapsing. Wise enough to feel disappointment without turning it into self-blame. Calm enough to understand that not everyone who stands close belongs in your inner world. That understanding didn't come overnight. It came from endurance, from silence, from choosing grace when it would have been easier to explode. And that is why this feels final, not dramatic. Final. Like a chapter that doesn't need revisiting. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need to be right. You just need space to breathe without armor. And as you sit with that realization, something subtle happens. Your shoulders drop, your thoughts slow, your body recognizes relief before your mind does. This is the moment before movement, the calm before a different kind of action. Not the kind that pushes, the kind that releases. Stay with that feeling for a second. Let it settle. Because once you understand why this surfaced now, you're ready to decide what comes next. And that choice is closer than you think. Aries, right now it feels like the world has narrowed into a quiet fork in the road. Not dramatic, not loud, just clear. You can feel it in your body before you name it. That gentle pull in opposite directions. One path feels familiar, heavy but known. The other feels lighter, yet uncertain. And you are standing still between them, not because you are afraid to move, but because you have always tried to be fair. You stayed longer than most would. You listened, you adjusted, you swallowed words to keep the air calm. That old path taught you endurance. It taught you restraint. It taught you how to survive environments that asked too much and gave too little back. There is no shame in that. It shaped you. But it also asked you to disappear in small ways, to soften your truth, to carry weight that was never meant to be yours. The new path does not demand explanation. It does not require you to convince anyone of your worth. It simply asks one thing. Are you willing to choose yourself, even if it changes the story others expect from you? That question lingers quietly. It does not rush you. It waits. And here is something I want you to hear. Gently. You are not abandoning anyone by leaving a place that no longer honors you. You are not betraying love by protecting your peace. You are not selfish for needing space to breathe. Staying silent to keep harmony has a cost. You have felt it, in the way your shoulders tense, in the way your energy drops when certain conversations begin, in the exhaustion that sleep does not fix. Walking away does not erase what was real. It simply ends what has run its course. And maybe part of you still hopes for a sign that choosing yourself is allowed. So let this be it. Not permission. Recognition. You already know which path drains you. You already know which one asks you to keep shrinking. And you already know which one, even in uncertainty, feels honest. This moment is not forcing you. It is revealing you. You do not have to make noise. You do not have to announce anything. Some decisions are meant to be made quietly, with dignity, in alignment with who you have become. As you stand here, notice how your breath changes when you imagine letting go. Notice the calm that flickers in your chest. That is not loss speaking. That is relief. And relief is a form of truth. You are allowed to choose the path that gives you back to yourself. Not all at once, not perfectly, just sincerely. Stay with that feeling for a moment. The one that feels like space opening instead of closing. Because once you honor that inner knowing, the next step doesn't feel like a risk. It feels like movement. And something inside you is already beginning to move. Aries, there is a tiredness that no amount of sleep can touch. It settles deeper than the body. It lives in the pauses between your thoughts, in the way you sigh without realizing it, and how your spark dims just a little when you walk into certain spaces. You've been patient, not the surface kind, the real kind, the kind that comes from believing people can grow, from hoping love will soften sharp edges. from telling yourself that understanding will eventually be returned. You gave time. You gave grace. You gave the benefit of the doubt more times than you can count. And that matters. It speaks to your character. But endurance has a limit. Not because you are weak, because you are human. There comes a point where staying begins to cost more than leaving, where your nervous system never fully rests, where your intuition is constantly on alert, where you are present but never at ease. That is not love asking you to stay. That is habit. That is conditioning. That is the quiet fear of disrupting a pattern that has already been hurting you. You may have told yourself that leaving would mean failure, that walking away would erase everything you tried to build, that if you just held on a little longer, things would finally change. But listen to this slowly. Holding on is not always strength. Sometimes it is self-abandonment in disguise. You were not meant to survive relationships, environments, or dynamics. You were meant to live within them. And if something requires you to shrink, to stay silent, to numb parts of yourself just to keep it going, then something is already wrong. That doesn't make anyone a villain. It simply means the energy no longer matches who you are becoming. You have grown. Your awareness has sharpened. Your boundaries are trying to form. Even if you've been resisting them, that exhaustion you feel is not weakness. It is wisdom knocking. It is your soul asking you to stop negotiating your well-being, to stop explaining your needs to people who benefit from ignoring them. And I know part of you still worries about being misunderstood, about being seen as cold, about being labeled as the one who changed. But growth always looks like betrayal to those who rely on the old version of you. Staying just to be liked has drained you long enough. You don't owe anyone your vitality. You don't owe anyone your fire. What you owe is honesty, with yourself first. Notice how your body responds when you imagine choosing rest over tolerance, peace over proving, space over obligation. There is a quiet relief there, a soft opening. That is not guilt leaving. That is alignment arriving. And as that realization settles, something shifts again. Not outward, inward. You stop bracing. You stop rehearsing conversations. You stop waiting for permission. You begin to understand that the next step does not require force. It requires trust. Trust that letting go will not leave you empty. It will make room. And that space you are creating now is already preparing you for what comes next. Aries, let's clear something gently, right here, right now. Walking away is not failure. It never was. Failure would be staying somewhere that slowly erases you. Failure would be convincing yourself that pain is the price of loyalty. Failure would be calling survival love. What you're doing now is different. This is self-rescue. And I know that word might feel unfamiliar on your tongue. Because you've spent so much of your life being the strong one, the one who holds, the one who pushes through, the one who says it's fine when it really isn't. You were taught that leaving means giving up, that silence means weakness, that choosing yourself means letting someone down. But listen to this carefully. Sometimes the bravest thing a soul can do is step back before it breaks. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone your endurance. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world if they mishandle it. The only debt you carry is to the part of you that learned to stay quiet to feel safe. The child who adapted instead of being protected. The child who learned early that peace had to be negotiated. That part of you is tired. Not dramatic tired. Bone tired. And it doesn't need explanations. It needs relief. Walking away doesn't have to look loud. It doesn't have to be sharp or sudden. It doesn't require a final speech or a dramatic ending. Sometimes it's just a door closing softly behind you. No slammed words, no raised voices, just a calm decision made in your own time. There is dignity in that kind of exit. You are allowed to leave without convincing anyone you're right. You are allowed to choose distance without turning it into conflict. You are allowed to protect your energy without justifying why. Silence, when chosen consciously, is not avoidance. It is clarity. And clarity feels strange at first. It creates space where there used to be tension. It creates quiet where there used to be noise. That quiet might feel unfamiliar, but stay with it. Notice how your breath deepens. Notice how your shoulders lower without effort. Notice how your thoughts stop racing ahead, trying to prepare for the next impact. That's your nervous system recognizing safety. You are not running from anything. You are moving toward yourself. And I know part of you still worries about what comes after. About emptiness, about loss, about the unknown waiting on the other side of that door. But here's what rarely gets said. What leaves when you walk away is not love, it's pressure. What leaves is confusion. What leaves is the constant effort of holding yourself together in a place that keeps pulling you apart. And in that space, something quieter begins to grow. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. It feels like permission, like a soft inner yes you've been denying for years. Let that settle into you. Because once you understand that leaving is an act of care, the story doesn't end there. It opens. And as you stand on this threshold, with one door closed and another not yet visible, there is something moving toward you already. Not loss, not regret, but alignment. Stay here with me a moment longer. There's a new energy forming ahead, and you're closer to it than you realize. Aries. Once you step through that door, something unexpected happens. The silence behind you does not feel empty. It feels held. Like the moment just after a storm passes, when the air is clearer and your lungs finally fill without effort. You may think you are alone in that space, but you're not. There is a quiet kind of protection that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't interfere. It doesn't push. It simply surrounds. You feel it as steadiness, as calm returning to your thoughts, as your body slowly releasing the habit of bracing. That is not imagination. That is alignment. When you choose yourself with honesty, life rearranges quietly around you. Not with fireworks, with precision. The right conversation happens without forcing it. The right message arrives at the exact moment you were about to doubt your decision. A person appears who listens without agenda. Or an opportunity opens that doesn't drain you before it gives back. And you might miss it at first, because it arrives softly. Serendipity rarely kicks the door in. It waits until you're ready to notice it. There is something new moving toward you now. Not because you chased it, but because you made space. And that is the part most people never tell you. What follows courage is not chaos. It's support. You don't have to know who this new ally is yet. It might be a person. It might be a shift in direction. It might be an unexpected sense of belonging where you least expected it. What matters is the feeling it brings. You don't have to perform. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to stay alert. You can simply be. That ease you feel when you imagine the days ahead is not false hope. It's resonance. Your energy is being met instead of tested. And yes, things begin to move faster than you expected. Not rushed, but synchronized. because once resistance leaves your system, flow enters naturally. You start to notice how often you smile without trying, how your thoughts drift toward possibility instead of defense, how your fire feels warm again, not sharp. This is what happens when protection replaces pressure. You are not being watched over in a fragile way. You are being supported in a grounded one. The universe does not reward suffering. It responds to truth. And the truth is, you chose to stop abandoning yourself. That choice sends a signal, one that reaches further than you realize. As you settle into this new rhythm, don't rush to label it. Don't try to define where it's all going. Let it unfold. There is intelligence in timing. There is kindness in the way things are aligning now. And the more you trust that, the more natural it feels to keep moving forward without looking back. Stay present with this moment, with this sense of being quietly accompanied, of being guided without being controlled. Because this is not the end of your story. It's the part where the tone changes, the part where what comes next no longer feels heavy. And as this new energy settles beside you, you'll feel it, a subtle readiness, a calm confidence, the kind that lets you take the next step without hesitation and without fear. Aries, this is the moment where everything becomes quiet enough for you to hear yourself again. Not the voice that learned to adapt, not the voice that stayed alert, but the one that knows when something is complete. Today, the 29th, you did not just recognize the truth, you chose to move with it. And there is a difference. Seeing is awareness. Acting is alignment. When that door closed, it did not echo. It did not demand attention. It simply shut the way something does when it has fulfilled its purpose. What stayed behind was not history. It was noise, confusion, the weight of carrying what was never yours to fix. Ahead of you, there is no rush. Just space. Freedom doesn't always feel explosive. Sometimes it feels like waking up without tension in your jaw, like realizing your thoughts are no longer rehearsing old conversations, like noticing your body is no longer bracing for impact. That is how rebirth often begins. Quietly, without witnesses. You are not starting over. You are starting clearer. The fire in you does not need to fight anymore. It can warm. It can guide. It can illuminate rather than defend. And that is a victory most people never reach. Because true victory is not being seen winning. It is feeling at peace with your own reflection. Months from now, you will remember this moment differently. Not with pain, with gratitude. You will see how much lighter your steps became after this decision. How opportunities found you without resistance. How people met you with respect instead of expectation. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped standing where you were unseen. This is the kind of turning point that does not announce itself. It integrates. You begin to trust your timing again. You stop questioning your instincts. You recognize that walking away did not cost you anything of value. It returned you to yourself. And as your life opens in subtle ways, you may notice something else. A steadiness you did not have before. A calm confidence that does not need approval. That is the aftermath of choosing truth. You are no longer chasing peace. You are living from it. Let that settle. Let it root into your days, into the way you speak, into the way you listen. Because what comes next is not about proving anything. It is about allowing what matches you to find you naturally. Stay present with this openness, with this gentle sense of arrival. The story does not end here. It deepens. And as you continue forward, guided by clarity rather than pressure, you will feel it. A quiet certainty, a grounded readiness, the kind that lets you step into what is next without looking back and without doubt. Aries, before you go, let me leave you with this. If something inside you shifted tonight, even just a little, that wasn't the story. That was you remembering yourself. The moment you chose truth over comfort, clarity over noise, your path quietly changed direction. And that kind of decision echoes far beyond what you can see right now. You didn't lose anything real. You reclaimed your fire. The kind that warms, not burns. The kind that guides others simply by existing. If this message touched you, if it felt like someone finally said out loud what you've been carrying in silence, leave a comment below. Your words matter here. They help someone else feel less alone. And if you're not ready to let go of this energy yet, stay with us. Subscribe. This space is built for Aries who are choosing growth with courage and heart. Most of all, trust yourself. You always knew the way. This message just reminded you. The journey doesn't end here, it deepens. And the next message is already on its way.